It's very exciting to have you here. My name is Dan Riker. I am Director of Climate Change and Energy here at Google, and long ago was a Dartmouth student. I also want to introduce my colleague, Aya Okuma, who's done a really fantastic job of putting all of this together. You're here for a very exciting reason, to tell us about your vehicle for change, to talk about the great work you're doing along the way, having started out in Hanover. I understand you're 5 weeks into a 10-week journey, exactly halfway geographically on this great trip that I think is obviously making a difference in your own lives, but also I think having some real impact on lots of other people in the way they think about environmental problems. We're very pleased to have you here at Google to hear your story. And while we don't have lots of Googlers, as we're called, here to watch you, the good news is this is being recorded for YouTube. And so this can have a nice big audience once we've recorded it and then put it up. So with that, welcome.
So what is the Big Green Bus? The Big Green Bus is a group of 15 college students from Dartmouth College who took on this project this year, this 5-year-old project, and are passionate about going around the country and talking to people about environmental issues, about being a smart consumer and living sustainably. The project started 5 years ago with a bunch of friends who wanted to have one sort of final hurrah after they graduated from Dartmouth, and converted a bus to run on vegetable oil so that they could get across the country for free. As they were driving, they saw that it was a great way to start talking to people. And year by year, it's grown and become more sophisticated in its goals and its educational mission. And here we are now, 5 years later and 3 buses later. As you can see, we have a coach bus. It's our new project this year, and we use that as a platform to bring people in to start discussions. We have a pretty great education program that you'll hear about in a second. And we use our bus as sort of as a sustainable home, so people can come in and really relate to things that they can do in their lives to sort of create collective action. An outline of our presentation, we're going to tell you a little bit about the bus and our mission, and then introduce you to all the bussers. There are a lot of us, and we have a lot of different interests. And then explain sort of the different parts of the bus and why the bus is special. Then explain why we are doing this, and go into our educational program. So we have 5 pillars of sustainable living that we talk to people across the country with, and we'll explain those in a second. And then we'd love to open it up for questions. So our mission is to help create a future that sustains people, the environment, and the economy. We promote lifestyle choices that conserve energy, use resources more efficiently, reduce waste, keep us healthy, and encourage civic engagement. So basically, we're going around and trying to get other people really excited about this as well. We really believe that we're at a great point in our country where we can take all of these things and create something bigger and better and more sustainable.
So why are we doing this? As Kate was saying, there's much more to this project than just a fun way to do a road trip. So right now, our country is facing one of the worst economic recessions since the Great Depression, and we're also facing a lot of social and political challenges from global warming and climate change, not to mention environmental challenges. So instead of wallowing in the depths of despair, this actually presents us an opportunity to get a better, more secure, more sustainable future for everybody. And one of the ways we see that is through green recovery. And green recovery has a triple bottom line of connecting the economy, the environment, and people in making America more secure and supporting our ingenuity, our creativity, and in making the green choice the smartest, most efficient, and lowest cost way of going about our daily lives.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are on the bus. One of the best, most unique and fun parts of the bus is the fact that we have such an eclectic group of people with very diverse talents that each person brings to the bus. So like our head of fundraising this year was Ben, who is actually a philosophy major. Our photographer and head of PR is Kava, who was a biology major. So we have a lot of different perspectives coming in, helping us out to make this project work. So these are a couple quotes from different bussers, and one of my favorite comes from Matt Smith, which is, "I'm a firm believer in education through dialogue, so let's start talking." It's kind of one of the mantras of the bus. It's just a little wacky picture, I guess. So this is a diagram of what the interior of the bus looks like. We designed it all ourselves. We gutted it, received a 1989 retired MCI coach bus, and then proceeded to clean it out, strip it, and outfit it and retrofit it with sustainable materials and eco-friendly materials as well. And so basically, just looking at the diagram, we have energy-efficient appliances. We've used CFLs, energy-efficient air conditioning. We have bamboo flooring, which is a sustainably harvested material as opposed to using hardwood, which takes a lot longer to grow back. As well, everything on the bus, all of our electronics are powered by 4 315-watt solar panels on the roof, which then go to charge our battery bank, which is 1,600 pounds in the front bay of the bus, so a substantial amount there. And then basically that powers outlets, our TV, refrigerator, track lighting, and all of that. And all of this was made possible by our sponsors, and all of the work and installation was done by the bussers. So the other main component of the bus is the fact that we also converted it to run off of waste vegetable oil. And that process basically starts with filtering vegetable oil, which we'll get from fast food restaurants, Chinese restaurants, barbecue joints when we were in the South. Basically pulling up, asking their managers if we can take the oil off their hands, and if they're not contracted by another company who comes and collects it, then we basically head out to their dumpster and use our collection pump to collect the oil, send it through some very substantial filters, which then goes into our 300-gallon tank, which is in another bay of the bus. And then from there, we use heat exchangers and heated fuel lines, which use coolant from the engine to heat up the vegetable oil, which is more viscous than diesel. So we have to, the heating process kind of allows it to be injected into the engine. And basically, from there, we can have a sustainable source that can take us across the country.
So I'm going to talk about life on the Big Green Bus. Part of the mission of the bus was to have this incredible classroom that could travel around the country. But the other component of that is the individuals that are on the bus acting in accordance to the things that we're talking about in the summer and the things that we're advocating people to do in their own individual lives. So on the bus, a couple of things that we're doing on our own to sort of act as an example for the people that we're talking to are things that incorporate our 5 pillars, which we'll talk about soon. Some of those are recycling. We have a recycling bin in the back, as Sarah pointed out on the diagram of the bus. And it's really interesting recycling throughout the country because it really lets us see what places need help, which places have great recycling programs. I can remember, and I'm sure all the buses remember, being in Louisiana and driving up and down strip malls asking people if we could recycle at their location, and people looking at us like we were totally insane. So, it's a neat thing to do across the country because we can see, at what point each part of the country is in, and some places obviously need help. Some places are doing pretty well, but that's just a neat way for us to gauge the interest level of Americans. Another thing that we did for quite some time was we had a composting bin. We advocate for people to take food waste, incorporate that into a composting system, and then either using it on their lawns as a really rich fertilizer or for a small vegetable garden, perhaps. But just keeping that green waste out of landfills. Our worm bin, unfortunately, could not stand the heat of Louisiana, speaking of Louisiana. And we're right now trying to get a hold of some more worms to keep that going. We also try eating locally, organically, and we try making most of our meals. So in each of the places that we're visiting, we're going to local markets, co-ops, farmers markets, and trying to buy really local food and preparing it on the bus. So one of the other things that Sarah pointed out was a kitchen. We try preparing our own foods on the bus, and the kitchen helps out with that a lot. We're also, we're a couple of us are eating vegetarian for the summer. We're trying to do small changes in our lives that are different, making small sacrifices, and we're really working as a group to encourage each other to be smart consumers, and that's been really helpful throughout the summer as well, that collective action. The summer tour for 2009, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the bus, but it's slightly different than what you may have seen in the past. This is the 5th year of the program, as it's been mentioned before, and in the past we've really been striving for support. And now that we have support, and phenomenal support at that, we changed the tour to reflect what we believe as being parts of the country that may need the extra attention. We really didn't want to spend time preaching to the choir if we had the opportunity to spend more time in places that may not have the educational basis that other places do. So parts of the country like the northwest corner was basically omitted this year. In the past, we've had great receptions in places like Portland and Seattle, but we felt that adding an extra week onto the south was more important than arriving in places where people were already totally on board. And we can't do that everywhere because it's great for us to also have an educational experience. So visiting places like Google and a bunch of the places that we've been in California where the environmental movement has taken hold with many people is instrumental in us being educated as well as educating other people. So like I mentioned before, we have 5 pillars of sustainability. We just try to get in conversation with people all around the country about these. And the 5 pillars aren't just for people who are of certain means or are capable of doing only certain things. We believe that people of all backgrounds are capable of making the changes that we're advocating here. I'm going to talk about the first of the pillars, reducing consumption and recycling. Reducing consumption ties back to a term that I learned about my fall term freshman year at Dartmouth. It's a term called affluenza that's affecting the globe basically, just that people buy lots of things. We don't really know why, but we constantly want more, and maybe we don't need it, but that desire is always there. So we're asking for people to be smart consumers, to look at something in a store, say, do I need this? Do I already have it at home? Can I reuse something else to, serve the purpose of this? And then if you are consuming, that you are being responsible about what you're consuming and being responsible about how you dispose of that, recycling. Another part of being a smart consumer is a term that's come up in the past couple of years about embodied carbon. So a lot of people talk about our fuel and say, well, so you're not burning anything because you're burning a waste product. And yes, while that's true, it also, the waste vegetable oil that we're burning represents food that was fried and then consumed. It also represents a plot of land that was grown to create what was then fried. And the plot of land that was grown probably used fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides. So we have to think about all of the parts of the equation that lead up to something that you buy in a store. And that's about being really smart and being really proactive about being a smart consumer. The next thing we're talking about as far as reducing consumption and recycling goes is just being more efficient in the products that we have, making sure that we really get the full life out of them. We visited the waste management facilities. Their headquarters are in Houston, Texas, and they're an incredibly innovative group of people, and they talk to us about their efforts to create a closed-loop cycle with their landfills, to have trucks stopping at landfills, dumping the trash or the waste products into the landfills, and then plugging a hose into a methane pump, pumping up their trucks full of gas and driving away with the waste products that the landfill creates. So just better using what we have, making sure that we do take all of the resources out of all of the products that we use, and that we responsibly dispose of those at the end of their lives. And next, Kate's going to talk about energy efficiency.
So the second of 5 pillars that we go talking about this summer is energy efficiency, as you can see. And the thing that I think is cool about talking about energy efficiency with the people we meet on the road is that it's attainable at many different scales. There are changes that we can make that have enormous impacts economically and environmentally, as you can see from these numbers. In 2008, the energy efficiency that we gained helped to avoid greenhouse gas emissions equal to taking 29 million cars off the road. So there's a lot of room or there's a lot of room for success, for very easy success, but it's really attainable for people to feel like they can do that. I mean, when you talk to the little kids and tell them about phantom loads, that's something they can go home and they can do. But they also, you can talk to homeowners about buying efficient appliances. That's a little bit more long term. And then for people who are interested, or who have never heard of, larger scale efficiencies, that's something that we can look forward to the future and get people really excited about, a way for America to grow and really be a leader in terms of the efficiency. So particularly when I'm talking about the larger scale energy efficiency that we talk to people about a smart grid. A smart grid is just an intelligent electric grid. Right now, our electric grid that we have currently was created in 1896. And obviously, we've used a lot more energy since then and have a lot more efficient and applicable technologies. So smart grids are able to connect all the different sources of power and transport them in a way that is intelligent and efficient, as opposed to just sort of randomly sending it across the United States. If you can see this map, the map on the left shows the current power lines, and the map on the right shows what a smart grid would look like. And it's much more intelligently designed to connect the sources of power so that power gets to where they are when they're needed. Sarah's going to talk about renewable energy.
All right, so our third pillar here is renewable energy. And just looking at the pie chart, the way it's broken down, renewables only account for 7% of our energy consumption. And there's a lot more potential room to grow there. So basically, you can look at the other breakdown that comes out from the pie chart. Some of them are solar, hydroelectric, geothermal, biomass, and wind. And, talking about a place like California, too, that you can really focus on are solar and wind. You take a look at a wind resource map that we have. The potential for wind is located mostly in the Midwest and along the coasts. And given the fact that most of the population, about 90%, is located on the coast, that's a huge resource for us to be able to tap into. And offshore wind is something that's definitely up and coming, but is still in phases of development. It's really difficult with issues that we have with the grid, like Kate was just talking about, setting up huge wind farms in the middle of Nebraska, let's say, and being able to get that energy to the centers of population. The other thing that California has done a great job with is solar power. We were actually at one of our sponsors earlier today, SunPower. We were talking with them about where their customer base is in terms of residential applications. And in speaking with them, they said that, California, which has a lot of initiatives, like the California Solar Initiative, they get a lot of business. And then the other state that they mentioned was New Jersey. And that seemed a little bit off, because if you look at this map, it's not up there amongst the states that would have the highest potential. And the reason is that they have state incentives as well. And so that's a huge part in terms of getting policy there to make these alternatives financially viable. And then, of course, there's other renewable energy sources that are up and coming and in stages of development. There's a lot going on with water, tidal technologies, wave technologies, water turbines. And then, as we saw earlier, a lot of our renewable energy actually also comes from biomass, waste to energy resources, and then geothermal as well. Marissa will talk about food.
So our fourth pillar for sustainable living is about food, how it's grown, how it's distributed, and how it's consumed. This is, something that I've been, the pictures here are from Dartmouth's own organic farm that I've had the opportunity to volunteer and work at during my time there. And it's been really, really special, like seeing where my food was grown, how it was grown, and then, having face-to-face interactions with the people that have grown it and then cooking it together. So the food industry, the industrialized food industry in the U.S. is the second most fossil fuel intensive industry behind transportation. And so what we're trying to advocate people think about and do when they go to the supermarket is to try to eat things that have been grown locally and that are also seasonal, because that lowers the greenhouse gas pollution from transporting food. Also try to eat organic, because another side effect of food is all the pesticides and herbicides that go into industrial food production that contributes to air and water pollution. Third, trying to eat whole rather than processed foods, which is much more healthy for you. Another side effect of our food industry is the health impacts. You know, a third of Americans are obese, and the top 4 health concerns are all diseases or cancer or things, diabetes related to our diet. Fourth, move down the food chain. Try to eat more green, leafy vegetables rather than meat, because a lot of our meat is raised on grain, which is very energy intensive. So, and if you do eat meat, trying to eat meat that has been grass-fed, which is much better for you, and it's also much better for the animals as well. And fifth and final is politics and action. As much as we're focusing on individual actions, in the end, individuals can't do absolutely everything. So we're really trying to encourage people to hold their elected officials responsible and make eco-friendly decisions the cheapest and most efficient and easiest options out there. And also we're trying to encourage people to think about what connects them to the environment. And we met with the Shelby County Sustainability Group in Memphis, Tennessee. And one thing that I found most interesting was that when they were developing their sustainability plan, they were trying to encourage individuals to take actions that were environmentally friendly, not because it was going to reduce X amount of emissions, but because this was going to help you contribute to your community and make a better, more cohesive community and a more sustainable community. And I think that's really where we need to go when it comes to sustainability in this country. So we're just trying to encourage people to think about the environment in terms of their community. And finally, we are encouraging people to take individual actions in the immediate as well as in the long term in 4 main areas: in their home, in transportation, how they get from place to place, at the store and at the market, so smart consumer decisions, and then finally before and at the voting booth. So if you're interested, all of these are on our website, so you can look into them in a little more detail later after the presentation. So that concludes our presentation, and we'll open it up for any questions or comments. Thank you.
You guys have done a great job presenting today, all the work you're doing, and my question for you now is, as you see and talk with people who have varying opinions and varying degrees of education on this subject matter, what's your best response to people that come up and do know a lot of the facts about the challenge that we're facing as a nation and a world, and say, I don't know if we can do it. It's just there are too many challenges. We're not gaining enough momentum. Solutions aren't coming into play quickly enough. And what's your response to that?
I mean, I'd say they don't think that solutions are coming around quickly enough. I mean, all technologies operate on small scale at first. It depends on a lot of investment, getting economies of scale. We're not looking for like the big bang, like all-in-one solution here. Like we're really trying to advocate people taking small steps, things that individuals can do really simply by going out and getting a home energy audit, or just, you know, reducing their own consumption in small ways, making smaller sacrifices, which in the long run, if everyone takes the time to do this, will make a huge impact. It's kind of starting with that like foundational basis, which from there we can incorporate all these great technologies which are coming into fruition. But you can't just start at the top and then kind of work your way back down. You have to start with that foundation.
The other thing I'd say about that, one thing I think is really cool about the environmental problem is that it's a global problem, but the majority of fundamental solutions are on a purely individual basis. And we are really dealing with a like human behavioral issue here. You know, we're not psychologically predisposed to be making smart consumer decisions, which is why I said it's great that we're all working with each other to keep ourselves on our toes and to be making the right choices as much as we possibly can, because we have what psychologists call a finite worry pool. We can't relate to global crisis because it's never happened to us. We're worried about, you know, senior year what I'm going to do after I graduate, the fact that I have no money, whatever, that's what I'm worried about right now. And because I can't relate to mass extinction, desertification, the world turning into a snowball, I have to be conscious about the fact that, I have to be proactive about all the things I do all the time. It's got to be at the forefront of my mind. So by, just like Sarah said, we don't have the solution, but we know the right track. We know that we're on the right track, and part of that is being a community and is helping each other make the right choices as much as physically possible, and educating ourselves about it. Half the time on the bus, we're visiting places to educate ourselves so that we can talk to people more accurately and more concisely and coherently. And I think the coolest thing about the environmental crisis is just that it's about us, like the normal peons. It's not about the top level people. They can affect a lot of change, but this movement has been grassroots, and that's pretty established. And just keeping that movement and keeping that encouragement is really, I think, like crucial to the success of it all.
Given the massive collective action problem that is kind of inherent in trying to get people to change their individual decisions, I was curious how the Big Green Bus feels about nuclear power. Is pretty much the only established way we have of producing large amounts of electricity cheaply with no carbon emissions.
Sorry.
Yeah, the question for those of you who can hear is about what we think about nuclear power. We did choose purposely not to, include that in our presentation because we really do want to focus on renewable sources of energy, which nuclear power is not. You do bring up a very good point that it doesn't produce greenhouse gas emissions like other fossil fuel sources. However, this is my completely personal, non-Big Green Bus opinion here. But I think that nuclear power is a very, very expensive option. The two nuclear power plants they were thinking about building in Florida were going to be about $12 billion each. And there is the waste problem, which really is a serious consideration. And I'm really concerned about environmental justice issues. And I feel like a lot of the communities that are currently suffering from environmental problems in this country are communities that have, done the least to contribute to the problem and are suffering the most. And, where we're thinking about dumping that waste in Nevada, is the, Native American lands. And that's something that really does need to be taken into consideration. And I could see that money going towards renewable energy rather than nuclear energy and having that be much more productive and successful. But that's my personal opinion.
Well, thank you for a great presentation. I have two questions. One, an easy one. What's the most surprising thing each of you has learned? And second one, when you talk about sort of politics and action, what do you think the single biggest step we can take from a political standpoint is?
Well, can I ask a clarification question for the second question? Do you mean collectively or as like what the next big step our government should take politically? Okay. Well, in my personal opinion, I've been surprised at how excited people are who have no idea what we're talking about. It's been really fulfilling to go to the South, go to places that don't have very much exposure to the Big Green Bus and its message, and to be able to engage people in conversations and have really meaningful discussions where we both learn things and they learn things as well. I think I was surprised by how much I learned while we were in the South. I sort of went there expecting to find nothing, and that's not true. There's a lot of people who are doing really great things. And there's nothing in terms of environmental activism, but and then I think what the bus stands for in terms of the next big thing for political action really resonates with me in that people just need to be aware and active and educated. It just goes down to the idealists and all of us that we should all be part of our country's system, and if everyone knows what they're voting for, who they're voting for, and holds those people accountable to their communities and to their pocketbooks and to their landscape, then I don't know. I think that's kind of a vague answer to your question, but I really believe that's what the bus is trying to do and hopefully doing.
What's been most fun, I guess not really surprising, but really fun for me is, and what's unique about this project is its grassroots approach. And I was lucky enough to be able to work with, in Hanover, New Hampshire, there's a new sustainability committee that's been formed. And when they were trying to figure out things to do to make Hanover more sustainable, they were looking at what towns of similar sizes have done. And I think that's what's great, is actually coming to places that are more informed. Like when we were in the Claremont College area, 2 women came on the bus. One of them works for a group called Farms Not Lawns, and they help turn people's front lawns into places where people can produce their own food. And, that's a new idea that I never heard of. And I think what's really, really fun is we're connecting communities and learning from them as well. And there's a lot of reinventing of the wheel that doesn't need to happen, and we can be inspired by each other. So that's been really cool for me. And then to answer the political question, I think what a lot of people are looking for right now is is making these energy efficiency, renewable energy choices economically feasible. So on a really, I think education is fundamental to our message, but on a practical level, what people really need to start demanding from their local, state, national government are the kind of rebates and tax incentives to make energy retrofits on their homes and to making, contact fluorescent light bulbs and those kind of things really, really efficient and really easy to implement in their homes. And then, governments should just make, for example, 40% of our energy goes to buildings. So having green building codes for all new buildings, making the environmentally friendly, most energy efficient thing the base of all of our operations.
I think I'd say I've learned a tremendous amount from the people that we've met along the way so far. I think personally what I've been most impressed by is what we were capable of before we left. We got our bus 2 weeks into spring term, which is only 10 weeks long. So we spent a tremendous amount of time working with it, stripping it, taking all of the grime and dirt from the past 20 years out of it, and building it from scratch. And just, we were 5 days before leaving, and, we had constructed so much, and still there was nothing still in the bus. We had to do all of the installation at that point. And just what we were capable of to come together as a group and install 2 300+ pound countertops ourselves, do all of the wiring, obviously the engine conversion, all of that was done by us. And to be tinkering around in there, and we've got 3 engineers on the bus. I'm one of them, and we've all taken classes or have had experiences before, but nothing on this scale, I'd say. So to tinker around, look something up on Google, how to install outlets or something, and then all of a sudden you're there doing it yourself, and then you go down to the breaker box to see if it works, and all of a sudden you flip a switch and the lights actually turn on. Was I don't know, I was really excited when all of that finally came together. So it's just been really incredible, and I know everyone, a lot of people didn't have experience with power tools or anything like that, and they were just kind of thrown into it. And I know a lot of people, I've forced Kari to do a lot of wiring with me, and now she knows her way around, and she goes off by herself and is just installing everything, which is awesome. And I guess in terms of the policy side, when you were asking your second question, I'm a big part of my personal education this summer is I feel that's the part of my education in terms of sustainability, renewable technology that I lack. And so I think it's really interesting to go around talking to people, hearing the different perspectives, because at the start of this trip I was very idealistic in terms of what we could be doing. I know that there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes in terms of government and all of that, which stand in the way of just being able to provide countrywide incentives for people to invest in technologies and become more sustainable and energy efficient. So I'm still working on that part personally. And I'm really looking forward to the second half of this trip and kind of completing my education and seeing where my opinions lie at the end.
And for me, I'm continually surprised at who ends up being an environmentalist, because 40 years ago it was pretty obvious that the dirty hippies were the environmentalists, and that was kind of it. But we've met people anywhere from two totally staunch conservative Republicans living in Texas that had just built themselves at the age of, I don't know, mid-60s, a LEED platinum home with 140 solar panels on the roof, to make a statement, in their own personal lives that just because we, side politically with this specific party, it doesn't restrict us to believing these things that have somehow been construed to be exactly what Republicans believe. Anywhere from that to driving out to a cult in the middle of the desert in western Texas and meeting the children of the light who, grow their own food. And, it's totally organic. And they were driving around the country talking, it's totally different, as God was going to purge the earth of all the humans to make the world beautiful again. But the idea that we had basically exhausted our time on the planet because of the extent to which we polluted resources. And, I was sitting there going, wait a second, like, I thought you people were crazy. Like, that's exactly what we're doing. So, the environmental movement has changed a lot. It's no longer like the grungy, dirty, hippie college kids. It's anywhere from the crazy cult people to staunch, Texas Republicans to college kids from totally different academic backgrounds rallying around the same point and trying to get people all over the United States to do the same. That's been the most fun for me because there's no way of knowing now when anybody comes up to you whether they're going to believe you or not. We had a presentation at an alumni club, the Dartmouth, Yale, and Harvard Alumni Club, and we assumed that it would be, open arms and hugs and kisses, and they were totally not happy with what we were talking about. And it wasn't bad that they were. It was great because we had a really good discussion, but it just goes to show that, you never know who's going to believe what, and labeling people right off the bat isn't a great idea, but just the fact that the environmental movement is such that anybody from any background can get behind it is pretty cool. I think that's it.
Well, let me thank you for a wonderful presentation. It's exciting, it's exhilarating, and I'm really impressed with what you guys have accomplished. The bus that actually operates, and you can collect this grease and run the vehicle on it. And from that to some very probing questions you're asking yourself and asking others, I think this it's a great combination of educating yourself and helping to educate people around the country about these critical issues. So thank you very much for coming to Google, and we're pleased to talk to you one-on-one and spend the next 15 or 20 minutes doing that. So thanks again, and I also want to thank again my colleague Aya. Take care.